Ever since it was announced that the guy from Twilight was going to be the next Batman, I couldn't help but be unsure on how to feel about this newest reboot to the franchise, especially since it was a reboot that was being made in place of what was originally going to be a different solo Batman project, co-written, directed by, and starring Ben Affleck as the Bruce Wayne we become familiar with in Batman v Superman and both versions of the Justice League. But the more news that came out surrounding it, the less unsure I felt about it all, and before long, I found myself getting decently hyped up for it. We haven't had a solo Batman movie since The Dark Knight Rises, and based on the trailers, it seemed that Matt Reeves was taking this in a direction that I was very much down for. So now that it's finally come out, is it fair to say this is a solid Batman film that was worth the wait? Yes. Mostly. The Batman is a tale of a younger Bruce Wayne who's only 2 years into his vigilante career and gets swept up into a series of murders committed by the Riddler. Along the way, his discovery of corruption rooted in the city's history and its possible connections to the Wayne family makes the hero question his quest and if what he's been doing has actually made any impact, and if it has, what kind of impact has it been? I gotta say, it is a well-handed approach considering the grounded style this takes has been done before in the Dark Knight trilogy. However, there is so much more of a stylistic method being taken on here that doesn't have much of an issue quickly identifying as its own unique world. And on that note, the Gotham created for this film is my favorite incarnation of the city in live action. I'm an enormous fan of the Arkham video game series and have always wanted to see someone turn that into live action, and this is undoubtedly the closest thing I've seen to that. There is so much attention to detail that it feels like a character in itself, and it genuinely gives off an appearance as though you've been visually transported to another world as opposed to seeing Chicago with a Gotham sticker thrown on top of it. Speaking of things that aren't characters that felt like characters of their own in this movie, the music. It's not easy creating a score for a character that's been around for decades and still manage to make it fitting and fresh, and damn it, man, I give many rounds of applause to Michael Giacchino. I think that's how you say his name. The tone of it is so new, but dark and brooding and so Batman. And it's literally stuck in my head as I'm making this review. Another aspect that I must give an enormous amount of credit for is the direction. The noir aspect works very well for this film. Matt Reeves really impressed me with the number of beautiful shots throughout it. The camera angles and movement prove to me that he has a deep understanding and appreciation for this character. And it's so refreshing considering how many projects nowadays just feel like they could have been directed by anyone, but this is a great example of a director's vision really coming to life. Now, as far as performances go, I think just about everyone nailed their parts here. Now, a lot of people are immediately jumping on the bandwagon of claiming Robert Pattinson is their new favorite Batman, and while I was much more pleased with his take on the character than I anticipated I would be, I wouldn't go as far as claiming he's my favorite quite yet. His Batman is very one note, and although I understand the reasoning behind this, it still makes me feel conflicted on what he brought to the table here. It was stated in an interview that this iteration of Batman is utterly obsessed with being Batman and has no interest in being Bruce Wayne, hence the reason he seemingly acts exactly the same whether he's in or out of the suit. Again, completely understandable, but I think in future sequels I may grow to appreciate the performance overall even more depending on how his Bruce Wayne evolves. And honestly, even as Batman I want him to eventually at least a smidgen of personality. I say that lightly, because to me, a part of being a good Batman is remaining stoic and more logical than emotional when speaking. But Robert's Batman tends to almost whisper everything and needs a bit more oomph behind it to match the physical intimidation he brings. Actually, compare it to the animated film Batman Year One and that voice, and you can see where he most likely got his inspiration from. But back to that physical intimidation of his. There's no doubt that Robert's Batman fully succeeds in proving himself to be a badass, even without hitting the gym for the typical superhero physique. The way he brutally pummels criminals while intertwining the use of gadgets is a pleasure to watch and should bring a smile to any Batman fan's face. Though I do have a small gripe in this area, which is why did they need to make him some kind of human Terminator? I mean, the guy's taking heavy gunfire and explosions damn near point blank and walking away with barely a scratch. I get it looks really cool, but I just think it'd be nice to see him be just as agile and evasive as he is a brooding brute force. Aside from his physicality, it's awesome to see a Batman that is so rooted in his investigative work, which gives us a chance to appreciate why he's considered the world's greatest detective. Although I will say that outside of the suit, it seems like that world's greatest detective title just fades away. He's very quick to believe like anything anybody tells him when he's not in the Batsuit. Am I the only one to notice that? Now, even though Robert might not necessarily be my favorite Batman for now, Zoe Kravitz has absolutely taken over my personal choice for favorite live-action Catwoman. Every word she speaks and move she makes is so on point with what I would expect from that character, and I hope they don't hesitate to bring her back for future installments. The relationship between her and Batman was captured exceptionally well, and it deserves to be fleshed out more. Jeffrey Wright is such a great actor with fantastic screen presence and really held his own as Gordon. Another great dynamic with Batman that I would be hoping to see, with the way he allows him to investigate the crime scenes even though the majority of the police force still doesn't know if they can trust the vigilante. Colin Farrell as the Penguin is absolutely unrecognizable. Between the makeup and his voice, I would never guess it was him if I didn't know any better. And though I'm not sure if an HBO Max spin-off series focused on him is necessary, quote unquote, after seeing him in this, I will definitely give it a go. The only other performance I wanted to speak on was Paul Dano's Riddler. He was good, and I liked him, but I'm also left a bit conflicted on his take of the character. It almost felt like he himself wasn't entirely sure on how to approach this because there's times he comes off as menacing and visceral, just enough anger backing him to seem intimidatingly unpredictable. And then there's scenes where it's like he's trying to channel Heath Ledger's Joker mixed with a Looney Tunes character. I get that he's a bit of a nutcase, but those are such opposing personality traits that it just makes it difficult to know how seriously you should take this guy. Are you a strategic genius madman or an overgrown child with access to too many dangerous toys? I also was a bit let down by the story elements surrounding him. It all felt a bit flat. So he's a disgruntled orphan with a small social media following that he corrupts because he wants to take down the system or something. Fine, but we're given no context as to why we should give a fuck about him and his cause. He just shouts a couple times about how life's never been fair to him, but the audience is never given an opportunity to understand what he means by that. I'm not saying we needed some whole origin story following his upbringing, but at least a smidgen more of insight into his motives would have been nice. Then there's the mystery, if you can even call it that. I enjoy how Batman was able to decipher the riddles with minimal effort, but I do think the story would have benefited from giving our hero something so intricate and complex that even he had a hard time figuring it out. The whole thing played out like more of an Easter egg hunt than a mystery unfolding, and when the quote-unquote big twist involving the Wayne family was revealed, I barely had much of a reaction. I just wanted there to be some sort of mind-bending enigma that kept us guessing until the very moment it all came together, but it all sort of just happens. But seeing it happen is still quite a fun ride. Towards the end of said ride, we get a brief preview of another all too familiar face in Batman's rogue gallery inside of Arkham Asylum. Down in the dumps, the Riddler starts to receive a pep talk from another inmate, and though it visually may be difficult to distinguish, if you can't guess who it is by the dialogue and laughter, then I think there's another open cell in Arkham waiting for you. This is our first glimpse of Barry Keegan's Joker, and
No! God, please, no! 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 No!
The Joker is hands down my favorite character of any property ever. Hero, villain, or anything in between, and I am absurdly critical about anyone that plays him. The concept of the Joker appearing in this universe is fantastic to me, and even the casting choice isn't one that I'm outright against, but the execution was severely underwhelming, and as much as I hate to say it, I have no desire to see more of that. Now, if he does appear in future installments and it does make a turn for the better, I'll be happier than anyone. But going off of what we got, I'm honestly shocked he got cast for the role. His voice had absolutely zero charisma, and his laugh just sounded like a fucking dollar store knockoff, washed down B-grade laugh that you would hear from a cheap toy. Lastly, the biggest complaint I've heard from many is the runtime. At nearly 3 hours, it is an investment, but I do feel it earns the majority of it. I can confidently say that at no point did I feel bored or want it to be over, but I will say this. Though I don't feel it was necessarily too long, I do feel it didn't need to be as long as it was. It could have easily shaved off anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes, and I think it really would have helped streamline the story for peak efficiency, if you will. But I digress. With all that being said, there truly is so much more good than there is bad here. Just about everything set up in this unique universe are story elements that I would be down to explore more of. And I am glad this seems to be forming into a trilogy from reports that I've heard. Rumors are swirling about the possibility of the Court of Owls being the main antagonist group for the sequel, and that would be a phenomenal story to tackle within the setting created here. But as always, I'd love to know what you all thought of this newest Batman movie. Do you think Robert turned out to be a great Batman? Are you looking forward to a sequel? Who do you think will pop up in the sequel? Tell me it all in the comments down below. Subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you can keep up with all the content coming soon, and I'll catch you at the next review.